In the early morning of the 3rd of January 2026, the so-called United States Department of War launched strikes on the Venezuelan capital city of Caracas and announced that they had captured Venezuela's leader, Nicolas Maduro. I'm Dan from the Internet. This is your Power Report, a breaking news one that I'm doing early Saturday morning for y'all because this is just insane. We need to break down the real reason of why this is all happening. The manufactured consent machine is going brrr right now. Like, we really need to level set with what's going on, and I think I've developed a pretty good analysis for y'all here. So first of all, I want to show you some more frightening footage. This is from the Turkey bureau chief for Middle East Eye, Rajib Solgu, who was showing this. Remember, this is people going out for Friday night. You know, they're out late, you know, maybe at a bar, maybe at a party or whatever, and they're coming outside running to bombs being dropped on them in a picture that has unfortunately become all too common in these past couple of years, with Western superpowers taking out their, you know, military might for their own imperial ambitions onto brown populations everywhere.
¡Uy! ¡Nos están invadiendo! ¡Nos están invadiendo! Están bombardeando la base, mamá. ¡Jesús, vámonos!
These attacks were in civilian areas, heavily populated civilian areas. Again, this is the capital city of Venezuela. And there are some early reports that a mausoleum for one of the former leaders of Venezuela was among one of the things that was struck by the United States. Of course, this comes after several months of the United States taking extrajudicial strikes against boats in the Caribbean that the United States alleges that are drug boats coming to smuggle narcotics into the United States. We'll get into that in a moment. A lot of that's been thoroughly debunked, but from what we understand, Nicolas Maduro and his wife are in United States custody, and there's some rumors about where they're going to go to that I'm going to get to in a moment. But just 11 hours earlier, before all this strike happened, it was a pretty busy day for Nicolas Maduro. He was meeting with some foreign dignitaries. Of course, there are, like, you know, New Year's celebrations that were going on, but he filmed in a very YouTuber fashion one of these car style videos directly addressed the United States. Perhaps he knew kind of what was coming, what was about to happen, but I think that it's very chilling to see this, you know, given what we know happened just hours later. And there's a little bit of a translation over this from Telesur. So I'm going to play that now.
To the people of the United States, I even tell you, here you have a friendly government. I know the United States well. I have driven around New York, Boston, Baltimore, Philadelphia, New Jersey, Queens, Manhattan, Washington. I have driven around a lot. I told the President of the United States that I know a lot. I know Constitution Avenue, which is beautiful, Pennsylvania Avenue, where the statue in homage to Bolivar is located, the Lincoln Memorial, which is beautiful, and I have driven there a lot. And the people of the United States should know that they have a friendly, peaceful people here, and a friendly government too. They should know that, and that our slogan is very clear. Since that this is a gift I have here for Ramadan, our slogan is very clear. No war, yes, peace.
Not war, Yes, please.
I want to leave that screen grab there for a moment, but please don't forget to like this video, subscribe to not just Stand from the Internet, but the new Power Report channel that we have, to make sure you don't miss some of these deeper breakdowns. But it's also very much worth noting here that Maduro offered Trump oil for peace just as recently as this past fall. You know, there are these escalations, these USS like warships that were heading and surrounding Venezuela's coast. They were threatening these sort of strikes this entire, past couple of months. And Maduro was even like, listen, for the sake of peace, in the name of peace, we'll make a deal, Trump. We'll give you access to Venezuelan oil, since that seems to be what you want here, really. Let's talk this out. Let's do this. And of course, in a lot of cases, Donald Trump instead chose to go with violence. But I also want to note that Trump, like Biden before him, when it came to the war on Palestine, again, chose war over peace, even though both Biden and Trump had opportunities to de-escalate things in a manner that does not involve this kind of terror, this kind of extrajudicial, against international law kind of actions, because these actions are going to come back around in some way. There's going to be some sort of, cyclical, I don't know if retribution is the right word, but these things have like a, boomerang effect. When we do things in the Middle East or Central Asia, or when we do things anywhere in the world, these things have an impact on us, whether it be economic, whether it be as far as international relations go. And I hope not anything violent, but violence is an increasing possibility now because of these things that are going on. I don't want to get to some of the justifications of this that are happening, because of course there are going to be justifications. An associate professor of sociology and social theory, previously written in The Guardian. This is Nathan Kalman Lamb, who posts a tweet from Mike Lee. I think he's a senator, congressperson. I'm not sure, but he's kind of an asshole. Just got off the phone with Secretary Rubio. He informed me that Nicolas Maduro has been arrested by U.S. personnel to stand trial on criminal charges in the United States, and that the kinetic action, look at that euphemism right there, the kinetic action we saw tonight was deployed to protect and defend those executing the arrest warrant. This action likely falls within the president's inherent authority under Article 2 of the Constitution to protect U.S. personnel from an actual or imminent attack. Thank you, Secretary Rubio, for keeping me apprised. Because originally Mike Lee had tweeted, I look forward to figuring out what the constitutional justification for this is, which is, just rich going all around. But as Nathan Kalman Lamb notes, as we all said, international law, such as it is, no longer exists. The United States, following Israel's precedent, considers itself to have the explicit authority to blatantly violate sovereignty anywhere in the world and abduct even leaders of other states. There are no guardrails whatsoever. And the interesting thing by this justification is that you're bombing a city, you're bombing a country that ostensibly we're not at war at. Donald Trump just declared this, emergency war on drugs kind of thing. And it's been known throughout history, even recent history, internationally across the world, that when dictatorial figures start to declare states of emergency, it is usually to try to give themselves some legal cover to expand their power, even when there is no emergency. And that power is usually expanded to commit violence on the global south, violence on poor countries, violence on countries who they think are not going to defend themselves. Already, you already see Claudia Sheinbaum and Luis Ignacio Lula da Silva, leaders of Mexico and Brazil, respectively, who are some of the larger, more powerful countries within Central and South America, who are denouncing this. You see Claudia Sheinbaum here saying, Article 2, Paragraph 4 of the Charter of the United Nations states verbatim, quote, the members of the organization in their international relations shall refrain from the threat or use of force against the territorial integrity or political independence of any state, or in any manner inconsistent with the purposes of the United Nations. Lula continues, the bombings on Venezuelan territory and capture of its president cross an unacceptable line. these acts represent a most serious affront to Venezuela's sovereignty and yet another extremely dangerous precedent for the entire international community. Attacking countries in flagrant violation of international law is the first step towards a world of violence, chaos, and instability where the law of the strongest prevails over multilateralism. So if you start attacking countries willy-nilly, there is a slippery slope to that. And, Lula da Silva is explaining this here too. The condemnation of the use of force is consistent with the position that Brazil has always adopted in recent situations in other countries and regions. I'm not sure how quick Brazil was to defend Palestine, but I'll leave that for another time because I don't know that top of my head, so I don't want to misinform anyone. The action recalls the worst moments of interference in politics of Latin America and the Caribbean and threatens the preservation of the region as a zone of peace. Yeah, there's a long storied history I'm not even going to get into right now of the United States during the Cold War, especially using the guise of threats from Russia and China to justify increasing military action in all of these regions. Here's NYC Southpaw, an account on Blue Sky, who says that former Honduran President Hernandez voluntarily surrendered and was duly extradited, tried, and convicted for drug trafficking, and Trump pardoned him 6 weeks ago. And this morning, Trump illegally attacks Venezuela and abducts its president and his wife, purportedly to try them for drug trafficking. So this is just very clear hypocrisy here because we also saw with the TIMECODES deal in El Salvador, how Trump made a deal with the El Salvadoran dictator to start to take kidnap detainees, purported undocumented immigrants to the United States, but some of them were here legally. Kilmar Abrego Garcia is another famous example of this. But it was reported at the time that there was a deal that the Trump administration had made to allow certain cartel leaders and drug smugglers from El Salvador who were in America and arrested to allow them to go back to El Salvador freely, because everything that the president of El Salvador, I believe it's Nayib Bukele, everything he says about trying to make El Salvador free from violence and all this different stuff, he is just in tune with the cartels as much as a lot of the corruption that he's trying to fight against. And you can see this here, this double standard. We have someone in the Honduran president who we have, tried and convicted, in a due process kind of way of drug trafficking. Nicolas Maduro, whatever's going on within Venezuela, we have not gone through a trial process, either nationally or internationally, and it should be through international courts in this case, whether Maduro has any sort of role in drug trafficking that happens within his country. Just as much the same as we don't know if Joe Biden has any role or had any role, or Obama had any role, or Trump had any role with drug smuggling in and out of the United States. But I'll actually get to that in a moment. Another funny thing here I want to note, just because Bam, my usual co-host, is not here, and this would be something that he was the first person to actually message me that this interaction was going on. But Southpaw also notes, it appears the Trump administration is planning to bring Maduro to Manhattan in New York City to try him just down the road from the United Nations headquarters. Maybe during the World Cup, who knows? Which would just be a wild thing to do during the World Cup. And I thought that was kind of an interesting thing here. But back onto the subject of why is this happening? What's really the motive here? Because Donald Trump is trying to say, and Pete Hegseth, Pete Kegsbreath, as some like to call him, have been referring to this as this is a war on narco-terrorists. They're trying to bring drugs into our country, and we're going to bomb the boats. And even though footage has been shown to people, legislators within Congress, of the illegal double tap strike on the survivors of one of the boat strikes who were trying to cling on and wave for help, you can't, international law, the Geneva Conventions, says that you cannot engage with enemy combatants, and it's hard to even say whether these are enemy combatants or not, You cannot engage with them if they are trying to surrender, if they pose no danger and no threat. And it seems like Pete Hegseth, who was going to release these and then decided, hey, actually, no, we're not going to release these, might be hiding something pretty egregious like that. But I want to go to some reporting that's been happening. And this is actually a pretty recent story, just from the 30th of December. It's just a couple of days ago, before the new year, where reading from the New Republic, the boats apparently wrecked in the November 6th strike arrived on Colombia's indigenous governed Guajira Peninsula 2 days later with 2 mangled bodies and torched jerry cans. But at least one of the vessels also carried evidence of the drugs it was smuggling on board, emptied packets of marijuana, cannabis. Mind you that the Trump administration just reclassified cannabis, marijuana, weed, whatever you want to call it, as a Schedule 3 substance. It used to be a Schedule 1 substance, so considered to be one of the most dangerous drugs that the United States classifies. Up there with narcotics, up there with certain stimulants. I'm trying to be ad safe here. But the Trump administration itself, following the paths of blue states like California and, you know, even other purplish states around the country that have decided to decriminalize and oftentimes legalize the sale of cannabis for medicinal or recreational purposes. The Trump administration itself says that cannabis is about as dangerous of a drug as cold and flu syrup, cold and flu relief medicine, Tylenol. I'm not going to get started with Trump's Tylenol stuff there, but these are medications that you can get over the counter with or without a prescription that have a very low likelihood towards, you know, chronic addiction symptoms, no pun intended. So yeah, we've also heard other stories. Here's another piece here. One man killed was in a U.S. military strike was Robert Sanchez, a 41-year-old fisherman and skilled boat pilot from a Venezuelan peninsula plagued by poverty. That same coastal area is known as a popular transit hub for different substances to Europe, but not to the United States. So again, like, are we declaring a war on narcotics because drugs are going to Europe? And if so, why is America getting involved? Why is America First, Donald Trump, getting involved in matters that have to do with Europe? I mean, if anything, it's just going to make it so Donald Trump Jr. And other people in the Trump administration who liked a little bit of that booger sugar want to go snowing up in Europe now. Another man killed in the strike, just for transparency, was considered to be a local crime boss who had been jailed for human trafficking charges, but it's unclear whether or not he was a member of Tren de Aragua or any of these other sort of like gangs that are happening. Again, there are realities of Central and South America that, because of U.S. imperialism during the Cold War, because of purposeful destabilization of governments, governments that are already, you know, like nations and states that are already cash poor but resource rich, have an even harder time pulling themselves out of the dire straits that they were put in during the latter half of the 20th century and beforehand with colonization. And through any sort of situation like that, you will get an underclass of criminals and people trying to leverage the system. They say that, oh, all these different countries in Central and South America are really dangerous and all these gangs are running around with guns and slinging drugs. Guess where they got the guns? The United States of America, where it's so easy to be able to get them. Guess where they learned a lot of these strategies of how to organize gangs? In United States prisons, in the carceral system, where there is so much chaos going on. There is no real effort to rehabilitate people. So you have organized crime that starts to organize both inside the cell and outside of the cell. These are some of the real reasons behind what you see, the realities that you see in Central and South America. And again, like, these are wonderful places. This is a small aspect of what actually goes on there. But the pretense behind this, where we're trying to stop drug smuggling, is just a lie. So before we get into the real reasons of why this is happening, we have to absolutely go to some of the ramifications that people in America are just starting to realize, like, hey, what precedent does this set? What could possibly happen here? Shout out Nikki McCann Ramirez from Rolling Stone, I believe, who gathered this clip from Fox and Friends this morning.
That Trump's message is very clear that, quote, the drug trafficking must stop. And when I hear that, I think, what must Claudia Sheinbaum, the president of Mexico, be thinking? What message does this operation potentially set up for her? Now, she has taken to social media, seemingly condemning this by simply pointing to Article 2 of the UN Charter, talking about not, infringing on sovereignty rights of another country. We know from our Fox News reporting that actually Mexico has cooperated quite a bit with our federal immigration law enforcement and border patrol and the like. However, it's unclear that President Trump and President Sheinbaum have developed a really good relationship. Do you think that she must be wondering what this all means for her?
100%. I mean, the Mexican president, the Colombian president, I know you had the guest on who's running for Colombian president. And I think that all of those leaders have to be looking over their shoulder as far as what that means and where this goes and tying to the drug cartels.
I mean, I would go even further. Emma Vigeland made this great point a couple days ago on TV, I think, either CNN or MSNBC, I kind of forget. But why not bomb and kidnap? Why not bomb the homes of the Sackler family? Why not kidnap the Sackler family, the folks behind the artist formerly known as Purdue Pharma, who were responsible for the overprescription of OxyContin and, worsening the opioid crisis, the narcotics crisis within the United States, within their borders. Like, in the Midwest was where they're based, if I'm thinking of. Purdue sounds like an Indiana kind of thing. I may need to double check that, but that's within the United States' borders. I believe the Sackler family settled, so that's not like necessarily an admission of guilt, but that's not necessarily an admission of innocence either. And it's not like we have to connect too many dots to figure out this family was connected to this company, and they spread this product, and through lots of different strategies that you can find in other videos elsewhere about the overprescription of these narcotics to people in the hospital, fostered addictions and ruined tons of lives. I have a feeling, though, that wealthy billionaires in the United States are not going to get this kind of treatment. But if you're outside the United States, wealthy or not, president of a country, president of a cartel, or leader of a cartel, or just anything involved, you now have to worry about the international threat of the United States coming in and meddling with your affairs, meddling with your sovereignty. What if Canada said, hey, we actually don't like the OxyContin thing, so we're going to bomb the Midwest, and we're going to take some billionaires and business leaders, and we're going to try them not in an international court, not in some kind of court that maybe the United States and Canada and Mexico share for some trade agreements, but to Ottawa, or to court in Ontario, right? Like, we're going to do this with Canadian rules and not the rest of the world's rules. That would be insane. But this is what we're doing with America right now. Interestingly enough, I was talking about, and this is going to tie together really quickly, so trust me. We were talking about Nicolas Maduro having a really busy day. One of the things he was doing was actually speaking with a special envoy from China, and they were meeting China and Venezuela, along with a number of other South American countries. They have deep connections and economic ties with China, and this is something that, and I have proof for this in just a moment, this is something the United States really doesn't like. They don't want China or Russia involved in anything, not trying to take over or coup governments, but making economic ties, making trade deals. They don't want to be, the United States are basically sore babies because they don't want to be beaten out of this game with trading and getting trade deals and fostering these partnerships with South American countries the right way. They don't want to negotiate. They want to do regime change. They want to take the natural resources for themselves. Whereas, other countries, China and Russia, they're at least treating, at least in general, definitely right now, they are treating these states with much more dignity within the bounds of capitalism than the United States is right now. So here's a little bit of Maduro, who was meeting with that Chinese special envoy. So Maduro's saying, great to see you. You bring back good memories. Happy New Year. This is the year of the horse, right? Talking to the Chinese envoy.
Yo lo conocí a él muy joven, muy joven. Hace 20 años. Hace 20 años que lo conocí como traductor cuando estaba el presidente Juntao. Ahora es director. Qué increíble, ¿verdad? Para pasar tiempo. Estás igual.
And then Maduro was talking to one of the members of the special envoy. Apparently they had known each other when both of them were younger. The envoy was just a kid. They're having these like normal relations here. So when we go back to that whole point that we were just hearing on Fox News, that we're naturally starting to get about, okay, well, what does this mean internationally? I think Mehdi Hassan had a really good point here, saying if Xi Jinping invaded Taiwan right now and toppled the president there, on what grounds would the United States object or have any credibility to say anything? So now this president is messing up with a bunch of other different interests. United States has interests in, or says they have interests in maintaining the sovereignty for Taiwan. And China says that Taiwan is within their sphere of influence. It's their country and they can do whatever they want with it. And the United States better buzz off. The whole reason we're trying to say, okay, well, China, don't invade Taiwan. There's an international order. There's like a rule of law. There's a system of these kind of things. We all respect this rule of law, kind of. And we only see rogue actors as the ones who don't do it. Okay, well, you have Russia invading Ukraine. You have Israel colonizing more of Gaza and the West Bank. You have now the United States committing regime change in Venezuela. These are all, massive, powerful countries within the global order. Russia, Israel, United States. Why can't China go, all right, fuck it, Taiwan, we're going into that? And the United States, of course, there's no such thing as, hypocrisy is obviously a thing, but no one cares about hypocrisy, especially not in the United States, especially not the Trump administration. But there's no leg to stand on anymore. What little leg there was to stand on is gone. And that's just one of the many ramifications that this attack now has. James Ball, a policy and politics writer, says Marco Rubio is reportedly saying Maduro will stand trial in U.S. courts. This corroborates the thing, we've been hearing in a lot of other different places. It now means that the United States administration's policy, which means it's now the U.S. administration's position that U.S. courts can hold foreign presidents, but not the U.S. president accountable for crimes. Isn't that insane? America is saying the United States president is above the law, but presidents and leaders who live in other countries, who lead other countries, who have only been alleged on the flimsiest of information to be doing anything that could be perceived as negative towards the United States. That's where the United States has jurisdiction, not international courts, the United States. Oh, but don't let the Supreme Court rule on anything, rule against Trump's unlimited powers, newly found unlimited powers, it seems. Don't let the international criminal courts come in, which I think any Democrat who's running in 2028 has got to at least open the table for that, because that's insane. I do want to go back again here to this post from Southpaw again. Former president of Honduras, Hernandez, voluntarily surrendered and was duly extradited, tried, and convicted for drug trafficking. And Trump pardoned him 6 weeks ago. Trump pardoned a convicted drug trafficker 6 weeks ago. He didn't get the book. He wasn't, locked up in an American jail. He wasn't kidnapped. They went through the process, and Trump decided, you're free to go. So it's not about drugs. It's clearly about regime change, but what do you do after the regime change? Now we get to the part that I've been wanting to show. But of course, not without some notes of manufacturing consent from the New York Times, which I would love to say the failing New York Times, but they actually gained a decent amount of subscribers in 2025. I think around 14 million, and their revenue is up. So that's annoying. But their New York Times briefing. It says, the title says, an operation in Venezuela. President Trump announced that U.S. forces had captured Venezuela's president, Nicolas Maduro, following a, quote, large-scale attack. And Thomas Kennedy writes here, an Argentinian PhD student in sociology, writer. Once again, the New York Times is doing stenography for U.S. regime change efforts. No mention in their headline this morning of this being an illegal war or a violation of international law. Instead, it says, an operation in Venezuela. I agree with what he says here to end here. Atrocious journalism. Here's another post captured here. Breaking. Explosions reported in Venezuelan capital. I hate it so much. It was not immediately clear what caused the blast in Caracas. The U.S. has been building pressure on Nicolas Maduro, Venezuela's authoritarian president. It was not immediately clear. 10 Palestinian children lose their lives due to explosions. It's like, who launched the explosions? It's, this passive language is the thing that is the reason why people don't trust the New York Times. I mean, there are people who, during any sort of like anti-Trump administration, you're going to have people who are subscribing and their paywall is getting harder and harder to deal with. So for people in the news, I can kind of see that. But they're overall people who don't trust the New York Times to give it to them straight. They go to other news sources for that. This is the New York Times' front page right now. It's a little bit clearer. And you also have their editorial board down here saying Donald Trump's attack on Venezuela is, quote, illegal and unwise. Yeah, no shit. That's from their opinion editorial board. So, that's there. But I promised I would get to you the actual reason. But remember, please like this video, share it, follow the new Power Report with Dan from the Internet channel on YouTube. It is a collaborator on this video right now. That's where you're going to get a lot more of these deeper dive Power Report clips from now to the near future. And make sure you share this and leave a comment below so you can let me know what more you want to hear about, what more I could do better. Should I make these longer or shorter? I really want to hear what you have to say about it. So with that said, I'm going to play a clip from the retired U.S. Southern Command General, Laura Richardson. This clip is from January 2023, and she was speaking to the Atlantic Council, this, big group of Western European and North American sort of like business leaders, military leaders, military contractors, just wonderful, completely trustworthy people. And I want to play here a lot of what she's saying, any movements happening in Central and South America are for. Because like I said earlier, like the context I had just given, and that's why I needed all that time to give that context, to give you the full story there. There is kind of a soft Cold War happening in Central and South America for geopolitical and economic influence between the United States and ostensibly Western Europe, your France, your Germany's, United Kingdom, things like that. That's one group. Then you have Russia as another group, and then you have China as a third group, all vying for influence. You notice that Russia and China aren't necessarily, putting destroyers and aircraft carriers off the coasts of California or Florida or Texas or Louisiana, right? They're going there, like we showed earlier, They're having diplomatic talks. They're making deals. You can go into a lot of the reasons there's problems with these deals. But again, like that's how you deal with things in like a peaceful international order version of the capitalist system. The United States is afraid of losing because they are losing in that battle. They don't want to negotiate. They don't want to give any deals. They don't want to give any breaks. What they want is total control and dominance. And they want that through regime change and putting in people who are loyal to the United States and not loyal to the places that they're supposedly supposed to govern. And so you get that refreshingly made clear.
If I talk to my number two adversary in the region, Russia, I mean, I've got, of course, the countries, Cuba, Venezuela, and Nicaragua with Russia relationships. But what I really look at, and 6 other countries, by the way, so a total of 9 that have Russian equipment in them. And we're working to replace that Russian equipment with United States equipment if those countries want to donate it to Ukraine or the cause that's happening and be able to replace that with US equipment. But is the disinformation and how prevalent it is in the Western Hemisphere. Over 30 million followers with Sputnik Mundo and Russia Today, Espanol. And we see the spikes, especially with upcoming elections and how much is going on with the disinformation. We have it in our own country, but to see it in Latin America and how prevalent it is with the younger generation is very concerning.
So again, I'm not going to say that Russian state-run media and their own sort of like harder pushes into gaining influence into Central and South America are, you know, completely moral and just, right? But she kind of gave away the game there. That exists in the United States as well. We have these different things with like, oh, Russia Today and these different outlets that were blamed for causing dissent within America towards the American government, when that dissent was already there. The reason Russia Today was able to exploit that was because it was already there. And now you have these same leaders who are saying, okay, now we have to get rid of TikTok, or now we need US government control over TikTok, because it's getting the young people to be awake to the imperial project of the United States that's actively going on and intensifying. Yes, because the United States is greedy, but also because the United States is losing.
And so we work very hard with our partners to try to strengthen their abilities to counter the disinformation as well. And then, of course, transnational criminal organizations. In my mind, that they sow the insecurity and the instability in the region, which allows the malign state actors such as the PRC in Russia to move in and to flourish. But a $310 billion annual revenue business with the TCOs. In my mind, the insecurity, the instability, causing migration, causing families to be on the move and it's not just with counter narcotics. It's not just with drugs. It's with human trafficking, illegal, unregulated, unreported fishing, IUUF, illegal logging, illegal mining. This region, why this region matters with all of its rich resources and rare earth elements. You've got the lithium triangle, which is needed for technology today. 60% of the world's lithium is in the lithium triangle, Argentina, Bolivia, Chile. You just have the largest oil reserves, light sweet crude discovered off of Guyana over a year ago. You have Venezuela's resources as well with oil. Copper, gold. China gets 36% of its food source from this region. We have the Amazon, lungs of the world. We have 31% of the world's fresh water in this region too. I mean, it's just off the charts. But then when you talk about trade is unbelievable. The trade in the region, you know, I talked about all the ties that we have with this hemisphere. But the PRC and a lot of our countries in this region is the #1 trade partner with the United States, #2 in most cases, not in most cases, I would say in some cases. However, to see the increase in investment in trade from 2002 from China, 18 billion up to 450 billion now, and on its way, what is predicted to be about 750 billion in the near future. And so I think we have a lot at stake. We have a lot to be grateful for in terms of the relationships with our partner nations and our hemisphere that we're part of, and in the Americas. But we have a lot to do.
So you heard it straight from her, and I didn't mince words the entire time. The United States looks at Central and South America as, in history, there's the scramble for Africa, where the European countries basically decided, okay, whoever can plant a flag down in whatever, spot of land they want to first, they get to claim that as part of their colony, as part of their empire. And little to no mention was given for the sovereignty of the people who sit upon these resources for what they want to do with them and how they want to control them. You have a kind of internationalized neoliberal capitalistic version that's happening right now, where China and Russia are using largely soft power, but the way the international rules-based order was written by the United States and the West and Western Europe, they're using those tools against the United States and Western Europe and Central and South America in order to make trade deals, to say, okay, we will build, China or Russia, we will build these factories here in return for favorable, trade deals, most favored nation status when it comes to oil, when it comes to lithium, when it comes to any of these different precious resources that Central and South America are sitting upon. The United States is mad that they are getting beaten at their own game. And so the main point, the main reason that they want influence is to get a foothold at their regional partners, to get them to stop using Russian and Chinese defense contractors and instead use them American defense contractors for their own defense, become more reliant on the American system, entrench themselves with American multinational corporations who definitely wouldn't do things such as human trafficking in the terms of using undocumented labor, oftentimes undocumented child labor, as has been shown in companies in the United States, who would never do things like illegal fishing and logging, which are the reasons that we have protection of our national lands, or at least had protection of our natural lands before Donald Trump came in and gutted it all and gave it to oil and national gas so you can drill, baby, drill at, places in America that have natural beauty and our national parks, places that Americans go to get away from it all for vacation, to admire what we have in the country. Other people in the world want to do that too. And you know what? If other people in the world don't want to do that, those resources are within their countries. And so it is their decision, hopefully through democratic processes, which all these countries are advocating for. It is their decision, not the United States' decision, on how they extract those resources, if they extract those resources, and who they share those resources with. The United States, however, wants to go in and say, no, forget the rules-based order that we set up. We're going to take this, it's ours, and we're going to dominate and, do whatever we want to do. And if anyone wants to fight us, we'll go crazy.
As everyone knows, the oil business in Venezuela has been a bust, a total bust, for a long period of time. They were pumping almost nothing by comparison to what they could have been pumping and what could have taken place. We're going to have our very large United States oil companies, the biggest anywhere in the world, go in, spend billions of dollars, fix the badly broken infrastructure, the oil infrastructure, and start making money for the country. And we are ready to stage a second and much larger attack if we need to do so. So we were prepared to do a second wave if we needed to do so. We actually assumed that a second wave would be necessary, but now it's probably not.
That's what's really happening here. So I want to conclude with a couple of different things here. First, there's an amazing clip that Abby Martin put out back during the first Trump administration, when it appeared the Trump administration was trying to install Juan Guaido to overthrow Nicolas Maduro that time to be not just the new leader of Venezuela, because again, Maduro's not a perfect guy. There's a lot of people who see him as an authoritarian. There's a lot of people who see that his elections were not legitimate. People did vote for him, but whether or not he won those elections is up to a lot of national and international scrutiny. I don't want to jump over that. But the fact is that this is about the sovereignty of the Venezuelan people. This is about making an example that the United States cannot go in. The days of the United States going into countries and dictating how their countries are being run is over. And so Abby Martin made this clip. This came out 6 years ago, February of 2019, and almost 7 years ago, rather. And it still feels very relevant, even though some of the names have changed.
Going to Venezuela firsthand made me realize how much the media is lying to us about the reality on the ground. The US government and its propaganda arms say it's a dictatorship where mass famine and civil unrest demands US intervention. They deliberately don't tell you key facts. An economic war being waged inside by private businesses and outside of the country by crushing US sanctions. Trump's sanctions have debilitated the Venezuelan economy, costing them $6 billion just in the last year. And sanctions do exactly as they're intended to do, by hitting the poor and working class people the hardest. Their strategy is to starve the people into submission, then cynically use that humanitarian crisis as the premise for more intervention. They say that millions of people are demanding the ouster of Maduro. What they deliberately don't show you are the millions who support Maduro, who voted for him, who are also in the streets protesting this criminal coup attempt. They say that a coup is democracy, that Guaido is restoring the Constitution by declaring himself president in a country that just held a presidential election last year. We've seen this propaganda playbook before, from Latin America to the Middle East, and it's literally being led by the same war criminals. John Bolton, who lied us into war with Iraq, Elliot Abrams, who facilitated a genocide in Guatemala. 1 million Iraqis died for a war based on lies, paved by the so-called free press. They're doing it again. All progressives and anti-interventionists have to stand in solidarity with our brothers and sisters in Venezuela to defend their sovereignty and let them decide their own future, free from US sanctions and intervention. We must call this what it is, an illegal coup underway by the bloodthirsty Trump regime to overthrow one of the last remaining independent nations in Latin America and plunder their oil. Trump has already threatened military intervention. Millions of lives are at stake. We need your voice now to speak up and speak out against another US war for oil. Hands off Venezuela.
Abby Martin, a phenomenal journalist. She's done a lot of work about Latin American regime change on behalf of the United States. She's done remarkable work, of course, in Gaza and on the Palestinian cause. Check out many of the great documentaries that she's done for the Empire Files, along with Mike Preisner. Gaza Fights for Freedom is one of the ones I'd recommend that was made way before October 7th. So Abby Martin knows her stuff. I also definitely do want to end here, before I give my true final take, with some of the reporting that's happening on Venezuela live on the ground. At the time I'm recording this, it's almost noon on the East Coast in America. So it's about the similar time in Venezuela. And the streets of Caracas are filled with people who, I'm going to let some of them speak for themselves. And of course, this is not a fully representative sample, but I felt like this was a pretty good, neutral sort of sense based on what I'm reading on the ground of how people are responding to this, attempt at regime change here. And again, these are going to be live English translations over Spanish speaking. So be mindful of that as we play the audio.
We have moved on to the phase of armed struggle, and our people are on the street defending the homeland, defending sovereignty, defending independence and the territorial integrity and also defending our constitutional president of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela. That is why we are here, and we call on the entire Venezuelan people, to all the patriots. Doesn't matter your political affiliation or your ideologies, all that are patriots of the Venezuelan homeland has to go out to the streets and defend our sovereignty in all the corners of the country. And as a minister of work, I call on the working class to take over factories and enterprises, to defend production as we have done so far, and to activate all the communal militia units. It's the popular military police fusion in all the spaces of the country to face and defeat the imperialist aggression. They call also to the outside. There's an entire international community paying attention to what is happening in Venezuela.
So there he was calling for people to come out regardless of your political ideology, because again, if a country were to come into America right now and say, okay, we're going to be calling the shots. It's going to be this company here that's going to be running the government. It's going to be this military here that's going to be running these states. I would be out in the streets against that. Sure, I don't want Donald Trump to be the leader of the regime. And if that regime were changed, that's ultimately what we're fighting for politically in the United States through our democratic process, the remainder of it that it is. But that's the way it should be. Americans fighting for their rights within their system, having the sovereignty, having the agency to make that choice, not foreign governments or other foreign figures out there. The Venezuelans are asking for the same thing. Whether you supported Maduro or whether you didn't, what this guy is saying is that now is the time to defend the sovereignty of the nation so that whatever happens is the choice of Venezuelans and not American multinational corporations. And for that matter, not Russian multinational corporations or not Chinese multinational corporations. This is about the people having the power and workers having the power as well, because they're looking for extraction of these resources. And what the workers are going to do, it's way too early to tell. There are some places that are reporting that, these workers are so poor, it's unlikely that you're going to see some sort of workers' revolt. Then again, if you're going to be poor either way, and you're just going to be losing your democratic rights or what you thought was left of them, maybe people decide to fight that. I don't know. It remains to be seen, and I think that'll be interesting in the days, weeks, and months to come. We will continue watching out for it on Power Report. Again, subscribe to this channel, Dan from the Internet, but also subscribe to the Power Report channel. Also subscribe to the Detour channel. There's going to be some stuff coming out there later. But I had one more clip and then one more point to make here. This is another person, a civilian, who is in the streets right now, protesting for sovereignty in Caracas and in Venezuela. I get the sense that she's a little bit more of a Maduro supporter, but I think, the point kind of still stands here.
We must all defend our territory in our communes, in our different spaces, and here in the vanguard in Miraflores, defending sovereignty in the land, working, because the work of the farmer does not stop. The harvest do not stop. We need to continue producing. We're going to come up on top of this, because that U.S. empire that dared to put his hands here in Venezuela once more is going to be defeated, because his U.S. people does not agree with what the government of Donald Trump is doing. The U.S. people, the conscious people of the United States, my call is to you: stop the shedding of blood. Here in Venezuela, we will remain firm. We are organized. They will not disorganize us. We all have a task, and we know what we must do. Farmers on the land working, doctors taking care of the sick, families taking care among families. It is the moment of families, the moment of land. It is the moment of sovereignty. I call all you to come here together, hand in hand, together in unity, We are stronger. Let's go together. Let's go workers. Let's go teachers. All together, we're going to come out and defend the homeland, because this homeland is ours. This homeland is for our next generation. It's the homeland of our sons and daughters, and they deserve that we give our life for her, because Venezuela is ours. Venezuela is respected. And this is a call as well to the international organization. Where are you? Where are you? That the homeland of Bolivar, the homeland that has always opened the doors to you for you to make a home, is currently being attacked. Raise your voice with dignity, with the same dignity that Venezuela rose, with the same humility, with the same solidarity that Venezuela stood to extend her arms until here we are. This homeland is ours. This land gives shelter, the land of Bolivar, the land that created liberating armies. In this moment, they tried to spoil it. So this call is to the international community. Standing alert. They are not coming here for us. They're coming for the oil, and they're also coming for you. Understand this. They want oil to continue their wars. They want our land to be able to continue to feed wars. They are not an army of peace.
Leave here with this. This is about the sovereignty of a nation, and this is about saying that the United States does not have any right under its own constitution, under the Venezuelan constitution, or under international law to dictate who is in charge of not just the actual state itself and the leadership, but the United States has no right to control the means of production for the people of Venezuela. My last thing, just like something I think people should, keep an eye out for. Remember her? Maria Corina Machado. She won the Nobel Peace Prize in Norway. So to that woman earlier who was asking, where's the international community? Sorry, sister, they're on the side of the United States on this one. At least Western Europe, sort of the NATO powers, because that was a controversial thing too. Machado dedicated her Peace Prize to Donald Trump. I'll say that again. Maria Corina Machado, who is the leader of the opposition, or like an opposition leader in Venezuela, says that she, quote, absolutely supports Trump's strategy on Venezuela, saying that we, the Venezuelan people, are very grateful to him and to his administration because I believe he is a champion of freedom in this hemisphere. This was on an interview she did with CBS's Face the Nation on December 14th, 2025. So very recent interview. Anyone who looks to Donald Trump as peaceful, anyone who looks to Donald Trump as caring about the people and the freedom of the people in Venezuela, anyone who claims that Trump is for that, I don't even need to say it. That's a US plant. That's someone who is going to work very well with the United States, and that is someone who is not going to work very well for the people of Venezuela. Just pure and simple. If you want to know what happened to Juan Guaido, I would say Maria Corina Machado is Juan Guaido incarnate. What Juan Guaido was not able to do in the first Trump term, when everyone realized, okay, this is just a regime change, like we're not doing it. Even when Tulsi Gabbard wasn't on that mess. Now Tulsi Gabbard's working for Donald Trump, doesn't seem to be saying much, if anything, or I've gone on too long already. I just want you to know, watch out for Maria Corina Machado, because that is the next puppet that the United States is going to be putting forward to possibly try to do a hostile takeover of Venezuela. And again, if the Venezuelan people truly do elect Machado, then that's their right too. But I have a feeling that you are going to see an opposition to some of the excesses of the Maduro government, but you're also going to see an opposition to the submission of Machado to Donald Trump's fascist regime. Fascist war criminal regime. Fascist war criminal regime that's lying about saying there's a war on narcotics and that's why they're attacking Venezuela, when just the other day he pardoned and let go the Honduran president for apparently the same charges. Folks, the power is always within you. The knowledge is always within you. Thank you for joining me for this really long one. Again, please like this video. Please comment to let me know how you think I did. More information that you want to know, anything I missed, please drop that there. Every little bit helps. I want to do more of these deep dives of PowerPort this year versus the sort of reactionary stuff, even though this is very reactionary. I whipped this up together in about an hour just before doing this. But I want to be methodical. I want to go through the step by step with people. So make sure you follow not just Dan from the internet, but also PowerPort with Dan from the internet. It's a new YouTube channel. We're going to be putting more of those deep dives and things like that on there. And both Dan from the internet and the Detour channel, please subscribe to those as well. But you'll see slightly different content on both. Still from me, still from the same PowerPort crew that you like and enjoy, but hopefully to be able to explore some different ideas, topics like this in general. So thank you again. The power is always within you. Stay safe, look out for your loved ones, and don't fall for any of this, fascist propaganda. Don't fall for the capitalistic propaganda. Use your head.